Welcome to another episode of Chat Sports Talk. You don't know, my name's Chad. Take a dive into sports. Welcome to Week 8 recap of the college football season, where I get to dive into the aspects of how my picks did over this past week. Go over my updated eliminator to see which other schools I got down beneficially eliminated. And I'm actually going to make the debut of my point index for college football, and kind of go from there to develop, say, how it compares to the other polls out there. Go ahead, smash that thumbs up button, especially like content provider. It really helps promote this channel out. You can also subscribe, let you guys review my work. Now, maybe if you subscribe, this costs you a dime, helps me provide more time and value for you. Now, going over last week, once again, I went 8-4. Seems to be my going rate right now. And for this, and it's like, get a couple games in there. I tend to pick maybe an upset or two, or an upset happens that I wasn't expecting. Things that go, it always happens. If I'm ever perfect in one of these weeks, I think, it's going to be a blizzard in Miami. So watch out for that. But anyways, let's go ahead and just kick this one off. We'll go ahead and start off with Boise State visiting Air Force in a key Mountain West matchup. This one I went with Air Force, saying they can get this win, maybe keep themselves in the hunt for a division spot in the Mountain West title race. And this game was just a sloppy performance. Or it could be a very defensive performance. I mean, depending how you really want to look at this matchup, it was a low-scoring affair. And no team really had the true advantage, even though Boise State jumped out early and led it, and it was like 19-7 at half. The defenses were just forcing 3-and-outs and turnovers here and there, so it made it a little more difficult. Air Force did make it a contest later on by scoring a late touchdown in the fourth, which gives them, we're just 5 points away, but they could not finish the deal. They ended up losing, go 2-3 in conference play. And the only highlight they have right now is their game against Army to win the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. But, Air Force falling to Boise State start off my week exceptionally well. Then we head to our handful of top 25 matchups. And then number 5 Clemson hosting number 14 Syracuse to determine who's going to have the lead in the Atlantic Division, and probably on pace to take on North Carolina for the ACC crown. There's still a few more games left to play to determine if that's the reality, but that right now seems to be the forefront, because Clemson's already beat Wake Forest. NC State's not in the hunt right now. And with this matchup, it was epic. I said Syracuse was going to make this close. Syracuse was actually winning, and they coughed up the lead. They had an 11-point lead heading into the fourth quarter. And it was 21-10 at the half. Syracuse was doing everything they possibly could. Defense kind of let them down, and the turnovers that Clemson were making early in the game, they bounced back from, scored 17 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to end up beating Syracuse 27-21. They go 8-0 in the season. With that aspect, they beat two schools behind them and have one loss, so they could still lose a game and still make it to the ACC championship. But so they still have 2 more conference games left to go. They still got a date against Notre Dame. Still got a date against South Carolina. So not easy road ahead for Clemson. Except maybe the Notre Dame game. We'll see how it transpires. And Syracuse put up one heck of a fight. Kind of stumbled right at the end. But, Syracuse is having a phenomenal year this year. Then we head up to Tuscaloosa, where Alabama is looking to rebound against Mississippi State. And Mississippi State is looking to try to stay relevant in the SEC West, because one more loss, that's pretty much they're done. Unfortunately, you got to take on Alabama, who just got beat by Tennessee. Alabama was hell bent to get revenge on someone. Had to be Mississippi State once again. Just can't seem to win in the game they need to win. They needed to win this game to stay relevant in the SEC West picture. They failed to do so once again. Fell to a team that was out just to mess with them, and that's all it was. Alabama easily rolled 30-6 victory. They didn't have to do much. They didn't really want to do much. They just wanted to make sure Bryce Young had his stats, 50 yards passing. They dominated for that first half, going up 24-0. Didn't look back. Go up the late touchdown towards the end, and that's about it. The Tide rolled 30-6. Then out to Baton Rouge, where the LSU was hosting undefeated Ole Miss in a key matchup in SEC West. Right now, Ole Miss is sitting on top of the division, and LSU is looking to get their name into that pick race for that West Division title. LSU shocked me on this one. I think Brian Kelly stepped at the plate in this one. He tends to stumble in key games, but this is the regular season, so of course he's going to win this one. But Ole Miss defense had no answer to Daniels whatsoever. Daniels is just a phenomenal athlete. He can do it all. He can pass, he can run, and he's really, really, really dangerous when he runs because he ends up scoring 3 touchdowns on the ground. The Ole Miss defense had no way to really corral him in either aspect. I mean, Ole Miss was kind of leading early and had the edge slightly at halftime. Heading in the locker room, 2017. But LSU defense stepped up, shut them down second half. Could not stop LSU. LSU just rolled over Ole Miss 45-20 to create a 3 tie for the SEC West, with all 3 schools now with 1 loss: Ole Miss, LSU, and Alabama. So those key games later on, especially with LSU and Alabama, we'll see if Kelly supporters will really love him then when he fails to beat Alabama, because he never has. I know. I'm an Irish fan. Next, we have to Fort Worth, where another top 25 matchup between 17th ranked Kansas State and 8th ranked TCU went at it. And this was between the two dueling quarterbacks of Martinez and Duggan. And once again, I doubted TCU. Especially after Kansas State ended up rattling off 21 points in the second quarter to get a 28-17 lead at the half. TCU's defense shut down Kansas State after that. They had answers for everything. They made the right adjustments. Kansas State couldn't find ways to make their offense any more potent, and then they just rattled off 21 points in the second half as TCU cruised, or I don't want to say cruised, but beating K-State 38-28. You can go undefeated and be the number 1 team in the Big 12. And we'll see a couple teams behind them that TCU's already beaten. So a rematch is definitely on the horizon, that's how the Big 12 play goes. Anyways, what should we see interesting is see if TCU could beat any one of these teams for a second time. But more on that here in a minute. Another top 25 matchup, undefeated UCLA goes up to Eugene to take on Oregon. Now, Oregon, after their thrashing to Georgia, has been a totally different team. After getting that wake-up call, basically, they have been dominant. Now, no, they've really, for the most part, not taken on very tough opponents. There's been a few here and there. Especially Washington State proved to be quite a thorn in their side. And this is going to be their first big test, taking on UCLA. And Bo Nix was just doing what he had to do, threw 5 touchdowns, five of them, and they put up 28 points in that second quarter as they end up holding off a late charge, which is a little bit too late, beating UCLA 45-30 to put them as the #1 team in the conference and make that USC-UCLA matchup at the end of the year mean a lot. But a game that I call correctly, and we'll kind of see what happens from here on out. Now, another huge matchup in the Big 12 was the game in Stillwater between Texas and Oklahoma State. Now, my previous video called this the Battle of the Mullets, and I totally forgot. Gundy got rid of his mullet years ago. But Uber's mullet did not provide the power that he saw in previous games. Him and his receivers were not on the same page for a lot of plays, especially in the second half. I mean, in the first half, it just who could score the most points. Defenses be damned. It was trying to say who could score the most points. It was a fun matchup between there. A 31-24 Texas lead at the half, and then the defenses showed up. They countered what the offenses were doing in the first half. They were shutting them down. They changed field goals in the third, but it wasn't until that fourth quarter where Oklahoma State was able to pull away, get some key interceptions, and beat Texas 41-34 to put them in the race as the #2 team in the Big 12. Then we head out to Happy Valley, where Penn State is playing host to Minnesota. Penn State needs this win to bounce back from their loss at Michigan and see if they can actually stop a running attack. They didn't really stop it too much. I mean, Ibrahim still had over 100 yards rushing, but he only got the end zone once. I think for Penn State's defense, I think they'll take that little W right there, as they were able to kind of prevent too much damage in terms of their the Gophers' running attack. And it was Clifford's passing that just dominated the game, where he almost had 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, as Penn State just obliterated Minnesota 45-17. Just pretty much taking Minnesota out of any Big Ten title picture. Penn State's hopes are still ever so slightly, because they need to beat, now they have to beat Ohio State and hope Michigan loses. So we'll have to see about that one. You have to Tulane, where they're playing host to Memphis. Now this one, I knew it was going to be kind of close just because how the American plays. And I know not a lot of team or media personalities are going to highlight this game at all because of it being the American. But Tulane has become quietly a scary team. Remember, their key win so far this season is beating Kansas State, which is not really saying much, but depending on how you look at it, Kansas State's still a very highly ranked team. So very quality, good team as well. So you can hang your hat on that, which is really good. They jumped out of Memphis early and often, and were just smacking them around. It was 35-0 at half. I thought this is just going to be just a one-sided affair. Memphis came back. Memphis shows some tenacity in coming back and trying to make it a game. I mean, they had their special teams came in with a punt return. Hennigan was trying to do his best. He had over 300 yards passing with 3 touchdowns. It just wasn't enough, as Tulane was able to hold off a resurging Memphis in the second half and beat them 38-28, moved to 7-1, 4-0 conference play. And we'll probably see Tulane, Cincinnati in the final. And they also meet off in the final week of the season, by the way. So you can see a back-to-back game between these two, which reminiscent of the was last year between Cincinnati and Houston. So fun times. Now we head off to Waco, where Kansas came to town. And looking at the aspects of the Big 12, there's quite a few schools there are 2 losses. And this was the game to pretty much eliminate one of them from Big 12 conference championship contention. Kansas has been the same since their starter went down. They've already lost 2 in a row. I didn't have much stock in them in this game either. I'm sure they'll find their 6 wins sooner or later in this season to get them bowl eligible, but until they can work around Bean as their quarterback and be more adjusted in what he had to do, the defense really has to step up as well. As Reese, had over 180 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. He can't win a lot of games. You can't stop the run. Baylor jumped up early, 20-3 at the half. They just held on. Kansas starting to make a little bit of comeback in the 4th, a little bit too late. Baylor was able to hang on, beat Kansas 35-23. Boom, 2-2 in conference play. On the outside looking in, I don't think much else is going to happen with that one, but definitely, something to look at. Then out to Lynchburg, Virginia, where BYU came to town to take on Liberty. And I mentioned last video, BYU has a hard time heading across the country to play smaller eastern schools. We always seem to lose. Remember the game against Coastal Carolina, and they just couldn't come up with it. And with Liberty, it's just one of these, quiet schools that are just putting up the numbers. They're not being flashy. They're not really taking on anyone that's going to move the radar in terms of getting recognition nationally. Even though they do have, at that time, 6 wins and only 1 loss. BYU jumped out early and often, 14-3 at the half, but that was it. Liberty's defense shut them down for the rest of the game. Nothing else came from that BYU offense. Liberty just strolled and just put up points at will, crushing BYU 41-14. Huge run for Liberty. Maybe they start getting some recognition in the polls. Maybe not. And then the last game on my schedule, or my picks, was the one that Wisconsin kind of needed to kind of stay within pace of the Big Ten West title, even though they've already lost to Illinois. So I don't think there's going to be any way for them to be able to come back and win the West. And Purdue pretty much needed this win to kind of stay with pace with Illinois, but losing it is not going to hurt them. But I want Purdue because Wisconsin just looks discombobulated right now. And I don't know what spark they needed. I think that spark came from Purdue. They jumped up early on the Boilermakers, 21 points, unanswered in the first quarter. Connell tried his best for the Boilermakers, having over 300 yards passing, but only had 1 touchdown. They struggled mightily a lot. After 3 quarters, it was 35-10. Pretty much behind Allen, who had over 100 yards rushing, but only a touchdown for the Badgers. And Wisconsin was able to hold off a late charge by Purdue, which Purdue was starting to come back and trying to, get that win, giving that, that 9th victory for the week. Was not meant to be. The Badgers defended their den in Madison, holding on to beat Purdue 35-24 to my week at 8-4. Now it's time to pull up the Eliminator, and we'll kind of see which other teams remain. I'll let you know it's now down to 30 schools that are left. So next week you'll see a new version of my graphics for the Eliminator. As I'll once again get rid of the conferences, but in part break it down with your undefeateds, 1 losses, and your bubble teams. As the bubble teams, the ones you got to watch out for, those are the ones that are probably disappearing. But as I pulled up right here with the American and the ACC, Pitt was the only one that really kind of found themselves getting bounced after losing again. So you're left with D5 in the ACC. with 3 of the 5 battling for one divisional spot. North Carolina probably getting the other one. And then the Americans only left with 2, with Cincinnati and Tulane. The Big Ten still has a huge presence of Eastern programs, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and Maryland still hanging around with 2 losses. We still have Illinois out there in the West. Could we see Illinois in the playoffs? No. No. As much as I would love to see the Illini in there, no, I don't see them doing that. Then we head out to the Big 12, the Conference USA, which will include the Independents, which still only leaves Liberty, being 7-1. And you're only left with 3 teams now in the Big 12 as Texas gets knocked out because of Oklahoma State. So that window of opportunity for the Big 12 to put a team up there is starting to shrink, and they might knock themselves out of the playoff picture. Moving out west, the Pac-12 still looks pretty crowded, even though Oregon beat UCLA. We'll start seeing some of these teams maybe start going away here shortly, especially when you have 2 losses of Utah, Washington, Oregon State. Sooner or later, will probably find themselves outside. And down south, you still got Coastal out there in the Sun Belt. And Mississippi State find themselves getting knocked out of the SEC, but still leaves a plethora of SEC programs still available. 3 of them out there in the West, sure to start knocking each other out. We also saw LSU beat Ole Miss. What does Alabama do against these 2 programs? Only time will tell. And that was the updated, my updated Eliminator. Now it's time for my debut of my point index poll. This is a point-based system, which means it's not going to look the same as AP and coaches poll. Probably will have more schools from the group of 5 in here than those polls. I gotta give them some love, especially if they're doing a decent season, having a decent season like Liberty and Coastal Carolina. And give them some love, but it's also ranked based on who you beat and who you lose to as well. So quick rundown of that for your wins. Each win gives you a certain point. If you beat a Power 5 school, including Notre Dame, that's 3 points. Any group of 5 school, including BYU, Army, Liberty, that's 2.5 points. Beat an FCS school, 1 point. Your losses, if you lose to a Power 5, that's -1. Lose to a group of 5, that's -2.5. -1.5. And lose an FCS, -3. Overtime loss, you give you a 0.25 points. You also have a combined winning percentage of all your games, which would be quote-unquote your strength of schedule. And then combined winning percentage of all the teams that you beat, which is your strength of victory. Note, if you play an FCS school, only that game will count. So whatever their record is outside of that does not matter. If they play another FBS program, that does not matter either. It's only for that game. Then all that gets divided by the number of games played. Thus, it gives you your point scale. Now, looking at my poll, as you see at number 25, I have the Beavers at 6-2. Coastal comes in at number 24 at 6-1. Then shows up Maryland at number 23 at 6-2. Cincinnati shows up at 6-1. Liberty at 21 at 7-1. There's Utah at 5-2, showing up at number 20, which I know in the AP and coaches poll they're ranked a little higher, especially after beating USC a couple weeks back. Tulane, they're at number 19 at 7-1. LSU at number 18 at 6-2. North Carolina at number 17 at 6-1. Illinois 16 at 6-1. Oklahoma State 6-1 at number 15. Number 14 UCLA. 13 is Wake. 12 is the Qs. 11 is Ole Miss. That's 7-1. As you see, UCLA, I think I had him higher in my polls, but after that loss to Oregon kind of dropped them out a bit, but still well within striking distance. Now, cracking my top 10, I have Oregon at number 10. Number 9 is Penn State. 8, USC. 7, Alabama. 6, Tennessee. 5 is TCU. And number 4 is Michigan. Number 3, Georgia. 2, Clemson. Number 1, Ohio State. But hey, that's just my top 25. It's not going to be the same as everyone else's. I'm sure other people will have Georgia number 1. Some people will have Tennessee number 1. Maybe some will have TCU number 1. That's the fun thing about college sports right now. You can determine who is the top 25. And right now, we have 6 schools that are undefeated right now. And it's a great time to watch these guys go head-to-head to find out who is going to be left standing, especially when 4 of these schools will end up facing each other. Or should I say, Georgia, Tennessee still have a game coming up. So does Ohio State, Michigan. So you know the field of undefeated should shrink to 4. But will that be the max? I think that's the max number you get for undefeated schools. But would that be the final? Who else gets in? Only time would tell, which is the great aspect of college athletics and college football. Is the reason why we love watching this game. And we'll kind of see how this pans out with other rankings out there, especially with my rankings compared to AP, because right now AP has no love for Coastal Carolina. I don't think even Coastal is even getting any votes. They only get like 2 points or 2 votes, 2 points in the coaches poll. So I'm sure I'll love to Coastal, but no one else is. We'll kind of see how that one kind of goes, but I'm not showing any love to South Carolina right now. Everyone else is. So, hey, there's that. But hey, let me know down below what you think. So Eliminator's down to 30. Who do you think is going to be the top 4 remaining? I think it's going to be, what is in my top 25 when the top 4, the top 6 is going to be the last ones remaining. I would really see that one. What do you think about my point index poll? What don't you like? What do you like? Just let me know down in the comments down below. While you're there, you can hit that thumbs up once again. You can also share this video with your friends and family. It really helps promote this video out. Once you subscribe, make sure you click that bell notification. Let you know next time I post any more content on my channel. And I will see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.